Are the doors closed? We're all secure here? Okay, good. You can never be too careful, Zombies, the undead, the living dead, the walking dead, and if you go up north, White Walkers. Ever since George A. Romero first introduced Western audiences to the concept of zombies in his 1968 film, Night of the Living Dead, they've captured our imagination for decades. In movies, television, and everywhere we go, they are what we crave. They're what we want to see. And why wouldn't we? Having risen from the dead, they walk the earth in a mindless daze, looking to consume an insatiable diet of human brains and flesh. But what if they aren't fictional? What if they're real? Every doctor, every nutritionist, and even every fitness coach will all tell you the same thing. You are what you eat. Research upon research has proven time and time again that the food we consume directly affects our physical and mental health, how we look, how we feel, and our sense of self. So we all know that being mindful about the food that we put into our body helps us take care and take control over our body. Add a little bit of muscle here, lose a little bit here, looking good and feeling good. But what about how we feel up here? What are we feeding our thoughts? What we feed our mind has a similar effect on not only how we feel, but how we think and what we think. How and what we think directly affects our behavior, the actions we take, and who we become. We form mental habits that over time dictate the lives that we have. It's very simple, really. We are what we think, but we could be so much more. So, every conversation we have with the world around us gives us something to think about. Food for thought. Consider it this way. So, if these are food for thoughts, think of them as ingredients that we consume on a daily basis. When we consume fresh and positive ingredients, we feel good in our brain. Our thoughts grow and we grow. However, when we consume stale and even harmful ingredients, repetitive thoughts, repetitive conversations which are negative and narrow-minded, that's what our thoughts become, and over time, that's what we become. Our minds become stale, and we get stuck in a certain way of thinking the same thing over and over again, doing the same thing over and over again, essentially living our lives without any focus, just doing what we're told again and again, kind of like zombies. Modern day mental zombies. In our 21st century hyper-connected society, the conversations never stop and we are always on. And we are constantly consuming these conversations. And while we focus so much on the food that we put into our mouth, we leave the front door to our mind wide open. It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet of conversations that we devour every day, most of which aren't very good for us. Whether it's the entertainment we binge, the news that we watch, the news that we read online, the people that we follow online, like influencers, politicians, brands, they all change the way we think, conversation by conversation. So, when every conversation changes how we feel, what does that mean? It means that every conversation matters. This is all grounded in neuroscience. Research into neuroplasticity, or our brain's ability to adapt, discovered how recurring thoughts, or even new thoughts, experiences, and any type of thinking makes our brain change. It makes the neural pathways in our brain adapt, rearrange, change, and even grow. In a way, it's as if the conversations we're having with the world around us leave small mental footprints in our mind. Think of it this way. You're walking outside, exploring the outdoors. As you explore, you leave little footprints behind you. These form a little trail. If you walk this path again, it becomes a proper path for you to walk through. Over time, you may walk it so many times it becomes a road or even a highway. You can take it again and again to the same destination without even thinking. It's just something you do. Have you ever gotten into a car and driven to the shop, only to realize after 10 minutes that you actually drove to work? In a way, that's what happens in our minds. The neural pathways in our brain have adapted to our daily routine, and they just take us to certain places without even thinking. Every conversation we have matters. And if the conversations we have are predominantly negative and problem-focused, that's where our brain goes. That's where our thought goes. It becomes our mental routine. It becomes who we become. It's as if every conversation slowly hardwires us to think a certain way, to think a negative way, conversation by conversation. Wouldn't it make more sense to stop focusing so much about the negative conversations, the negative aspects of our lives, the problems, and start thinking more about solutions? Who knows? Maybe if we thought more about the solutions and we took our mind there, we'd create a path that led us to somewhere better. This is thinking that therapists and coaches refer to as solution-focused thinking, which is at the core of solution-focused brief therapy and solution-focused coaching. Over the last 40 years, the benefits of this type of thinking has been proven in research and in the very same neuroscience that I mentioned earlier. This type of thinking, at its core, is solution-focused, as the name says, future-directed, and goal-oriented. Now, I'm no neuroscientist. I'm telling you this right here and now. But as an Erickson-certified solution-focused coach, I have seen this work. And more importantly, the people I've worked with have seen it work. A nice simple way that I like to use to explain this type of thinking is essentially using an imaginary line. I want you to imagine that the start of the line is a problem, and at the very end of the line is a solution. We shift our focus from thinking about the problem towards the solution, from what we don't want to what we do want, essentially flipping our thinking from the negative to the positive. And in doing so, reframing our thoughts, our actions, and even our language into the positive. So we begin thinking about our strength and using our strength rather than our weaknesses. We leave them over there. We think about what we do have rather than what we don't have. We think about what's working and how we can use what's working to make more things at work, rather than focusing on what's broken. And essentially, moving towards the future rather than dwelling on the past, focusing on what is within our control and what we can achieve. Essentially, becoming proactive about life rather than reactive. It's the difference between troubleshooting or problem solving to solution finding. It's the difference between consuming and creating. In a way, it's the difference between being a zombie and being human. It's a nice way to think, and it would be lovely to think this way all day, every day, wouldn't it? But here's what happens. At every moment, every day, we have a choice. We want to think towards the solutions. We want to focus on the good in life. We want to focus on our skills. We want to focus on everything we want. We all want to do that. But life itself, the way we've wired our brain to think, and all the negative and problem-focused conversations around us are pulling us in the other direction. And we find ourselves stuck, literally stuck in a zombie-like haze, unable to get from where we are to where we want. Unable to think creatively, unable to think solutions, let alone find solutions. We find ourselves literally stuck. And what do? We keep eating. We keep doing the same thing we know what to do because, hey, that's life and that's just the way we know. We consume and become consumed by the life we have instead of creating the life we want. So what do? How do we put the focus back on what we do want? How do we put ourselves and our lives back into a solution focus? Well, we said earlier that we are what we think and that every conversation matters. By changing the conversations that we have with ourselves and with the world around us, we shift ourselves from being problem-focused to solution-focused. We change our zombie status by changing our zombie diet. And we take solution-focused thinking into solution-focused living. It starts with the conversations you have with yourself. Think every moment of what you can do. Think of your strengths. Think of everything that you want to achieve. Think of everything that you could become. Think of every single thing that you could create in the world around you. And think of everything that you could develop and make better for yourself and for the people around you. Next, it continues with the conversations you have with the world around you. Once you have this solution focus, you need to start thinking about what kind of conversations are you having with the world around you. Every conversation matters, whether it's online, offline, or even with the entertainment and the news that you consume. So be mindful of what you're eating. First, consider where it takes your attention. What does it focus your attention on? Is it focusing it on the negative or on the positive? What is it focusing your attention towards, and what is it focusing your attention away from? And maybe it's just a distraction. And if so, what are you trying to distract yourself from? Next, think of the element of balance, not only with the different types of conversation, but in terms of their variety, but also within them. Ask yourself, does this conversation that I am consuming right now, whether I'm having it with a friend, whether I'm reading it online, or whether I'm just watching it on TV, does it let me have different opinions, different thoughts? Does it give me something to chew on? Next, think of the element of choice. I love this one because so few people think about it. Do I choose to have this conversation right now? And if so, does it let me choose what I think, what I believe, what I want to do? Finally, I want you to think of where it takes you, where it takes all of us. If we change our conversations that we have with ourselves, and we move individually towards being more solution-focused, changing the conversations we have with ourselves, we change the conversations we have around us. It all starts with you, because you are what you eat, and you are what you think, and every conversation matters. By changing the conversations you have with yourself, you stop the chain reaction, which causes you to be reactive to the problems in your life and proactive towards the solutions you want to create. This changes not only how you experience life around you, but how you talk to the people around you, helping them become more solution-focused as well. We're then able to start some new conversations, or even change the conversations that we're having right now. Changing the world one conversation at a time. Averting a zombie apocalypse by turning from problem-consuming zombies to solution-creating humans. This is all within our reach. We can change our conversations and we can grow ourselves because we never stop growing. Have you ever noticed how mindful we all are to what our children eat? We make sure that they eat healthy, nutritious food to help them grow. We make sure that they don't watch bad stuff online, they don't read bad stuff, that they don't use bad language. We even watch the language we use around them because they're still growing and we're grown up. But have we really grown up? I mean, we may have physically reached the limits of how big we can become, but we never really stop adapting to our environment, changing, and we never really stop growing. The neuroscience I spoke of earlier backs this up. Throughout our lives, our brain continues to adapt to our surroundings, rearranging, changing itself, and adapting to what it is we experience from the world around us. So let me leave you with some food for thought. If you are what you eat, and you are what you think, and every conversation matters, I want you to ask yourself, what are you eating? What conversations are you having without even noticing? What are you consuming from yourself and from the world around you? And what kind of conversations are you creating? How can you change your thinking from being problem-focused to solution-focused? Changing your diet. And by thinking about diets, we always think about diets as something really, really negative. I'm going to stop eating, I'm going to consume less, so I have less here, so I can look better for someone else. Why don't we flip our thinking to solution-focused thinking? With a solution-focused mental diet of the conversations that we're consuming, where we nourish our minds with food that nourishes our thoughts, helps them grow, what could we gain? What could we all gain? Because at the end of the day, we never really stop growing. I mentioned earlier that I hope the doors were closed and that we were pretty safe here in the library, you know, because of the zombies. This is a place where ideas grow, where ideas thrive, where people grow. Zombies won't come here. Zombies don't grow. They just consume. They don't create anything. Humans can create anything they put their minds towards. We never stop growing. So never stop growing. And together, let's grow ourselves and let's grow humans. Thank you very much.